Right, praise the Lord. We'll continue our study in the book of Daniel. Today we are going to start with chapter 3. And last week, of course, as I mentioned to you earlier, I couldn't join you in this study of the word because I'd been to England. England is a place where we lived for some years. I did my master's and doctoral studies. Then we went back to India. We thought we'll visit it. So last Tuesday, I couldn't join you because I was in another country. We came back. Now I'm in the Louisiana in the United States. Having said that, let's go over to Daniel chapter 3. I'm going to read verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar is a king. He is now making an idol or an image of gold. So chapter 3, we are going to see what happens later on. Shall we commit our study to the Lord in prayer? Let's pray. Loving Heavenly Father, we say thank you to you for the time you have granted to us to study the book of Daniel. Even as we study chapter 3, open our understanding. We may know what and how we ought to live in this world when we face difficult situations. You've given us many examples, even from the lives of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Give us the grace to understand and to follow all that you have taught us through your word. Committing the study of your word into your hands, we offer this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. The book of Daniel is incidents or a narrative. It talks about 4 people, 4 Jewish men. Daniel, and also the other 3, they have the Babylonian names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. 4 of them. In chapter 1, we find they take a decision. Although they came to a land, a foreign land, idol worshipping land, who don't follow the Lord God, they decided they will not pollute their lives. They decided they will follow the Lord at all costs. Now remember, there were more than these 4 people. There are many Jewish people who have been selected, who have been trained, many of them. But 4 of them decided to follow the Lord. And Daniel, book of Daniel, talks about it. Now, again, in chapter 2, we have seen Daniel is a person who understands vision and he can reveal it because he trusted in the Lord. That was in chapter 2 we find. So after that, we find Daniel and his 3 companions move up in the official job under the king. That's what we have seen. Daniel is in charge of all the governors and also in charge of the province of Babylon. And under the province, in the province of Babylon, these 3 young Jewish people were given. Now, what we are going to see today is in chapter 3 is something interesting. Nebuchadnezzar does something and he wants his officials to acknowledge that. We'll see why he does and what happens at that time. Now, we are going to see that in chapter 3, it talks about only the 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. The question rises, where is Daniel in chapter 3? Similarly, you remember Daniel in lion's den? We will read about it later on. When you come to Daniel chapter 6, you see the things that happen and Daniel gets implicated and the 3 people, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, are absent. So people question, how come 4 people decide to take a stand? In chapter 3, we find only 3. Where is Daniel? In chapter 6, we find only Daniel. Where are the other 3? Now, we will try to answer that as we go through it and see what exactly is happening. So when you read the word, when we read it very carefully, we get all the answers. Chapter 3 comes after chapter 2. Chapter 2, Daniel told the king about the dream he had, a statue, and he explains that. In the explanation, he said, O king, you are the head, the gold. So among the 5 kingdoms, 4 are human kingdoms. The last one is God's kingdom. The focus of the dream is on the God's kingdom because it filled the whole earth. It destroyed all the kingdoms. That is exactly the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar. But at the same time, among the earthly kingdoms, he says the best, the gold. We do not know what exactly happened to Nebuchadnezzar at that time. Maybe he was very happy that among the political kingdoms, mine is the best. He comes up with an idea. He makes a statue of gold, puts in a very big plain of Dura. Then he calls all his officials and says, you worship the statue I have made. Let's go to verse 2. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the king, gathered together satraps, administrators, governors, the counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. Then the satrap, the administrator, governors, the counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, all the officials of the province were gathered together to the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar king has set up. They stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Then the herald cried, to you it is commanded, O people, nations, and human languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. Whoever falls not down and worship shall same hour be cast into the midst of a burning furnace. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar has been conquering lands, right? So, to consolidate the political power, in all probability, that is the reason. He makes an image, calls the leaders, the administrators, the people who are governors, people who are doing the political administration of his kingdom. He called all of them, come and see the image, worship the image. When they do that, they give allegiance to Nebuchadnezzar. And the political kingdom becomes far more stable. So in those days, it's easy to govern a land very close to you. But if you are having a large kingdom, some of them had a very large kingdom, to reach to the extreme end, it takes days and days because they were having only horses, animals to carry them. So it will take a long time. To control that, probably, that's the most probable reason, the king is coming up. Why he made a gold? Maybe he got an idea from the dream which Daniel explained to the king. So he calls all the rulers under him, asks them to do it. Everybody comes and everybody does it. It's a normal, it goes on. Probably looks like a normal thing. Look at verse 7. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down, worshipped the gold image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. Now, mark this verse in verse 7. People, all the people, the nations, the languages. So he's integrating these groups. It's not easy to integrate people who speak different languages, people with different ethnic groups, or even different nations. So we don't know how Nebuchadnezzar got the idea. He just made an image. We don't know what that image is, how it looked like, but it's made of gold. It's a big one, huge one. You see, it is 90 feet tall, 3 score cubits, 80 feet tall, almost 3 score cubits, it says. 3 score is 60 into half time, 90 feet. Yes, it reaches up to 90 feet. 6 cubit in verse 1 is 6 cubit, 9 feet width. It's a huge statue. What shape, what form it had, we do not know, but made of gold. So when you see that in a plain, a huge statue, it is imposing. So people come and worship. It goes on. It goes on, right? Now, what happens is this: what we need to understand very clearly. Look at verse 8. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. Let me tell you something. If the Chaldeans did not accuse, not all the people, some of them accused only 3 of this: Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. So let's get it. In a huge empire, when things happen, when some people don't go and worship, also nobody bothers. That's what is coming. Now, some of the Chaldeans were accusing these 3 people, the young Jewish men. What is happening is the Chaldeans are also rulers. These 3 also rulers. So probably there is a sort of a rivalry in the jobs. In probability. These guys may not like these 3 Jewish people holding positions. You see, these 3 people were set up in the affairs. Go back to chapter 2 and verse 49. Daniel requested of the king, he set Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Daniel was in the palace with the king. Now you will understand how Daniel is protected. In all probability, he was part of the king's center. He may not be required to do this, or the king might have sent him on an errand. That's also another possibility. So Daniel is not involved. Another possibility is nobody pointed a finger at Daniel at that time. So this happens not because the king was keeping an account who is doing, who is not doing. It's because somebody pointing a finger at those who follow the Lord. Now, apply to your own life today. Many times we find that in our lives, in our workplace, in our studies, wherever we are in society, everything goes normal. Under the same circumstances, you will notice some believers come into problems, some believers don't. The reason is somebody is pointing a finger at those people. So we need to be very careful when certain calamities and disturbances happen to our Christian believers, not to become judgmental all of a sudden. We tend to be sometimes very judgmental. This happened to them, it didn't, under the same circumstances, it didn't happen to us. Now let's be very careful. Here it is the Chaldeans pointing a finger. When you go back to Daniel, the same thing happens. Somebody pointed to the king. The king didn't want to punish Daniel. He said, look, Daniel is praying, you have to do something like that. So they complain. So the complaint of the unbelievers creates problem to us. We need to understand how to deal with that. So the complaint of these Chaldeans brought problem to these 3 young men. Let's go further. Verse 9. They spoke to the king, Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a deal that every man shall hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. That's what they're telling. You have made the decree, O king. You have said it. Fine. The king is listening to them. Verse 11. And whoever falls not down and worships, that you should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Now this we all know. Nebuchadnezzar said, I have made a fiery furnace, I'm going to throw them into that. Verse 12. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. Now watch what they're telling. Immediately you will know what is there in the mind. Okay, you set them over the affairs of Babylon, province of Babylon. Probably some of them were looking for that kind of a post. They lost their post because of these 3 young men. We do not know. Look at what they say. They could have said, look, These three people are not worshipping the image. No, you set them up to look after the affairs of the province of Babylon. So that may be one of the main cause for them to do that. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, these men, O king, have not regarded you. Look at the complaints they give in verse 12. They don't respect you, O king. First thing. Second, they serve not your gods. They don't say they serve not our gods. Have you noticed? They are now kindling the anger of the king. O king, they don't respect you. O king, they don't serve the God whom you serve. That's what they say. They serve not your gods, nor worship the golden image which you have set up. The main complaint they're showing on the golden image, but that is become the last point, right? So now look at this. You have set them over the affairs of Babylon. So now, many a times when people point a finger, it may not be the reason why they are pointing. They may be having some other reason behind them. We need to understand all these things. It happens in day-to-day life. So in this case, it is this. These people were upset that these three Jewish young men are looking after the affairs of Babylon for the king. King's official there. That is one problem. Second, they don't worship their gods. They worship another god. That's the second problem. And the third only they say, the golden image. So that gives them an excuse to point a finger at these people. So we need to understand that when somebody points a finger at us, at believers, and due to various reasons, first make sure that it's not your fault. Second, the reason may be something else, not exactly what they are talking. Now what happens? Verse 13. Chapter 3:13. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. The king is getting angry. Very angry is now. How can these people, whom I conquered and brought them, whom I took and trained them, you remember 3 years they were trained because of the king only, for whom I gave my food. I treated them so well. How they can go against me? He's so angry. He calls all the 3 of them. The 3 of them come and stand before Nebuchadnezzar. Verse 14. Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do you not serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Look at it. Now, what is the king asking? Don't you serve my gods? They took a decision. Daniel and these 3, we will not defile ourselves. So these 3 will not serve the gods of the Babylonians. Now he is asking another question. You won't worship the golden image which I have set up? What's the answer they give? Now, before they could answer, the king gives them a second chance. What is it? Look at verse 15. Now, if you are ready, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, and dulcimer, all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if you worship not, you shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Now, we need to understand Nebuchadnezzar at this time. He is angry. At the same time, he tried to bring in certain justice. He could have taken and given them the judgment straight away, throw them into the furnace. He didn't do that. He says, I give you a second chance to worship my gods. That's what he says. Worship my gods. Worship the image I have made. Otherwise, I'm going to throw you into the furnace. Then he makes one more statement. What did he say? Who is that God who will deliver you from my hand? You remember? We're going to study. You know what happened to Nebuchadnezzar? He was eating grass like animal. When he, as a king, when you challenge God himself, you are going to run into problem. One thing we need to understand, it is God who sets up the kings in the kingdom of man. Without that, nobody can rule in the kingdom. In the book of Daniel, that comes very clearly. Okay. So God is going to do that. And God has been setting people. Nebuchadnezzar didn't understand that. And he challenged, who is that God who can deliver you? In other words, he says, there is no God in the entire universe who can deliver me. Nebuchadnezzar is moving himself into the very position of God. Now he is going to pay for it. We'll be studying a little later about that. God humbles him, okay, in front of everybody. So when he gives a challenge, he's now expecting these three men to respond. Now we must understand the way these three people respond. It's beautiful. In 16 to 18, we read that, verse 16 now. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered, said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. Need. He said, you don't need to ask us this. In other words, what they're saying is, we are not going to change our stand. Where we stand, that's it. You don't need any answer from us. Verse 17. Look at verse 17. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. You know what he says? You throw us into the fiery furnace, our God is capable of delivering us. And further they had, look at verse 17. What is the question he asked? Who is the God who will deliver you from my hand? Nebuchadnezzar asked, nah, they're answering that question. You know what they say? Look at verse 17 and our God will deliver us out of your hand, O king. What a challenge. Our God will deliver us from your hand. Who are you? Literally, they're saying you're nothing. Verse 18. That is a beautiful verse. If not, in other words, even if my God does not deliver, be it known unto you, O king, we will not serve your gods, nor worship the image you have made. What does 18 mean? That is the understanding of God. We need to know that. Two things these people have said. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. We know the capability of our God. That's the first thing. That you find in verse 17. Now, what is verse 18? They say, even if it doesn't do, we are not going to worship your gods. What are they conveying? Again, another quality of the Lord God. It is the will of God. They believed fully in the will of God. If our God wills that we should be thrown into the furnace, we have no problems. If our God wills that we should not be thrown into the furnace, we have no problem. We have nothing to decide on this. The decision is given to our God. That's what verse 18 he says. Whether he saves or not is immaterial to us. We know one thing, he's capable of saving, but the decision to save is not with us. It is with our God. I hope you understand what I'm trying to convey. Amazing insight into the very character of God. He's capable, but let our God decide to deal with us. That is amazing. So these three people said that, the young people. What happens? Verse 19. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, full of fear, is angry, is already angry, now he is furious, burning with anger. And the form of his appearance was changed. He's been challenged. He thought he's a great guy. And these three people, prisoners, captives, have challenged him. So his appearance changed against Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Therefore he spoke and commanded they should heat the furnace 7 times. He's commanding his servants, go and put more heat, more fire into the furnace, 7 times more than usual. Then he commands his army, most mighty men in his army, that were in his army, to bind Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, cast them into the burning furnace. Now, you know what happens? They're all fully dressed with a coat and hat and all. Those days, they had certain kind of a dress and attire. He says, now put rope and bind them completely. Now, I don't know why he asked them to bind. No idea, because in the fire the rope will burn completely. Maybe he's very angry and then he didn't want them to move the hand, let them fall down. And before the rope gives way, let them burn. That maybe he may be thinking that they should not even move their hands or legs. So they bound them. Verse 21. Look at verse 21. Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, and their turbans, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning furnace. They were bound with ropes, each thrown into the furnace. Verse 22. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the furnace slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Now, some strong people were taking them. They're bound now. Because they are bound, hands and legs, everything bound, they can't walk. They have to be carried and thrown into the furnace. That's the idea. So as they carried them to the edge of the furnace to throw them in, they were thrown into the furnace, but the men who carried, because of the flames were coming over them, they were burnt and they died. Look at this. King's command was urgent and the furnace exploded. The flame of the fire slew the men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Verse 23. And the three men, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Now, very interesting. The writer just says they fell down. After that, about them is all that Nebuchadnezzar looks at it, and his comments only indicate to us what is happening inside the furnace. Verse 24. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the king, was astonished. What is that? He was taken aback. Why? He saw his own army people, strong and stout, they all died of the fire. These three men thrown into the furnace is looking, they are on up above, they are looking down into the furnace. He's surprised. He rose in haste, he gets up. So something strange is seen. And he's talking, he's speaking. And said to his counselors, all his people are standing beside him, did we not cast three men bound into the midst of the furnace? They said, yes, O king, true. We threw three men. Now, what is Nebuchadnezzar saw? What surprised him? The king answered and said, lo, I see four men loose. He's saying four men. That fourth man is taken aback, shocked. The king is shocked by seeing a fourth man walking in the midst of the fire. All the four are walking in the furnace and they are not hurt. He says they are walking. And the furnace, the fire should make the cloth burn. The coat, the turban is not burning. How can it be? They're all walking. Then he makes one statement. Look at verse 25. The form of the fourth is like the Son of God's. Now, why did he say that? So the fourth person with Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego was not very similar to them. He didn't look like another human person. With the result, the king is able to perceive the fourth person is something connected with divinity. So he uses the word the Son of God. Something divine he's saying. We do not know exactly what he saw. So the fourth person was definitely different from Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. He is a human being, human form. Four people agreed. But maybe something is surrounding him, which made the king get surprised. And now he realizes the God of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego is in their midst, right in the furnace. We'll see that little later as we go down. The king realizes it is God himself walking. Verse 26. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, spoke and said, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, you servants of the Most High God. Look at him what it says. You are the servants of the Most High God. He acknowledges immediately the God of these three Jewish people is the Most High God. In other words, he's still believing multiple gods. This is the highest level of God. Come forth. Come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego came forth out of the midst of the furnace. 27, verse 27. And the satraps, administrators, governors, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power. Mark that. The fire had no power, nor was the hair of their head singed, neither was the course affected, nor had the smell of fire come upon them. You know, when somebody goes in the fire, burnt up, the smell will be there. Even that is, they are totally astounded. Verse 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Now, again, in all these things, Nebuchadnezzar acknowledged only one thing. There is a God for them. Their God is blessed. He is the higher God. He's still believing in multiple gods, basically. He said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him. So he says that the fourth person is the angel, and have changed the king's word, yielded their bodies, that they might not serve or worship any God except their own God. He's acknowledging. They refused the king's word. They went against the king's word. And that God is able to protect them. So he's a God most high. Now he makes a decree. See, therefore, I make a decree that well, that's what he says. He says he's making a decree that every people, every nation, every language. So he's talking about people group, talking about nations, talking about language groups who speak anything amiss against God of Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. He said, don't talk anything against this God. He's a very powerful God. Now you understand his concept with Nebuchadnezzar's God. He is the most powerful God. So don't talk. If anybody talks, they'll be cut in pieces and their houses shall be made a hash heap, because there is no other God that can deliver in this way. You got it? He still thinks there are multiple gods, and this God is the most powerful God. He cannot. So let us give him respect. He's giving him respect. Nebuchadnezzar comes into that. Go back to verse 30. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego in the province. Now, what do you understand of it? When you come to chapter 1, all the four take a decision not to defile themselves. Chapter 1, we read that. When you come to chapter 2, one man is singled out, that is Daniel. He is singled out in the sense he gives a challenge to the king. Daniel gives a challenge in chapter 2. In chapter 3, the three people give the challenge. What is the challenge? We already studied that. He says, you have a dream, you have forgotten that, give me time, I will reveal the dream because my God will reveal to me. So Daniel also brings his God. He tells the dream, he gives the interpretation of the dream. Okay, that is how Daniel did it. Because Daniel did it, what happened? Turn to chapter 2, verse 48. Then king made Daniel a great man. King is lifting him up. Among the four, Daniel goes very high. Gave him many great gifts, made him the ruler over the whole province of Babylon. Entire province of Babylon is their language group, their own people. So he's now putting a Jewish man to rule over the entire Babylon. There are Babylonians. And chief of the governors. Can you believe it? Chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel comes next to the king. There itself you'll see that. Daniel has gone even beyond the governors. That may be another reason, perhaps this image of gold when he called the king. He was sitting in the palace. So those people have been exempted. Probably, we do not know. It's not given that only the three people who were outside the palace and governing the province of Babylon, they were taken care of. The Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So Daniel got it because of what he did, revealing the dream. Now in chapter 3, we find these three men, because they challenged the king. They said, there is a God. He will deliver us. Even if he doesn't deliver us, he's capable of delivering. We are not bothered. When the God delivered them, they get their promotion on their own testimony and on their own credit. Chapter 2, Daniel gets it on his own credit. Chapter 3, these three people get it on their own credit. Very interesting. Now, when you read the book of Daniel, you're seeing the lives of one man, Daniel also, three people, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and much more than that. The prophecies of the end times, with the time frame it is given. That is amazing. The time frame also we are going to see later on as we go through those chapters. Also, we are going to see when Nebuchadnezzar challenged, who is the God who will deliver you from my hand? God will deal with Nebuchadnezzar also. That also we are going to study. So it's a very interesting book. As we go through it, slow study, when you study the book of Daniel, we get a lot of information. It is very applicable to our times. In our times, there are a lot of opposition even to the Christian belief system. Around the world, it differs from country to country. But believers are living in every other place. Even in the country where I live, it is there. Now I'm in the US, you are also in the US. So here also there is certain opposition to the Christian belief system, what you and I believe. Now, many of us can still have a normal life, but some of the people will go through problems because of that. It happens all around the world. I've seen it in different countries also. In a group of believers, not all of them suffer, only few people suffer. Let's be careful in our assessment to pray for them. And this comes mainly because somebody is pointing a finger at them. They've been affected because these people have been promoted or somebody like them, as we have seen today. So all the time because of that it happens. Very, very interesting. Even if you look at a persecution, if you study that, in one area the church is flourishing, no problems. Another area, the same church which is flourishing is persecuted. All in the same group. Very, very interesting. So many times even I used to wonder why it happens. It's not uniform all over the place. Now, when you study Daniel, you understand that much more. Certain times God allows certain things to happen. And as the three young men said it, our God is capable of preventing, of saving, doing anything. But to use his power to save us or to prevent certain things happening in our life, that his prerogative. Let our God will decide. I'm not going to dictate to my God. That is exactly the message we need to understand. We call it the will of God. That God has a purpose. Because of that purpose, it takes us through different routes. It's not going to be the same route for all of us. All of us will be going different routes. So let's be compassionate and let's be conscious of this one fact. Our God is capable, but He may or may not act. That depends upon His purpose to be achieved in our lives. If you look at the three men, if they had not had this pointing of the finger against them, saying that they are not worshipping, so the king has to call them, otherwise king may not have called them. So they faced the king, so they went into the furnace, they got the promotions. If this didn't happen, they wouldn't have got the promotion also. They would have been staying in the same position. See, sometimes when you look at it, his ways are wonderful. He handles his children through the skillfulness of his hands. So we have completed Daniel chapter 3. God willing, next week we will be continuing Daniel chapter 4. As usual, a few more minutes are left. If you got any comments on that, feel free to say so. If you got any questions, feel free to ask. There are a few more minutes are there. We can utilize that time so that we can clarify any doubts that we have. The time is open for all of you. Kindly unmute your phone and you can give your comments or your questions.